So first things first, what to you is the biggest challenge of actually setting up a studio itself, whether it's picking out the identity, the size? What to you is the very foundation of a studio?
The big challenge right off the bat is just knowing what you're getting into, what kind of stuff you want to do, what kind of games you want to make, what your personal aptitude is pushing you towards. That's typically the first problem you need to solve. Like, because you could want to do 5 different things, you might be wanting to make hardcore games, but you don't have the funds. So there's all sorts of things that you have to consider before you decide what you want to do. Then the second challenge is finding the right group of people. We've had the experience of getting the wrong group of people off the bat, and that didn't work out for them, it didn't work out for us, there's a lot of difficulty. But then slowly, the proper team starts fitting down. So once you get the right team together, they start interacting well, they start to give rise to a culture, it starts to give rise to an identity and so on. So the big challenge is getting the right team together and knowing what you want to do. And I would imagine that's like the biggest challenge off the bat. And then after that, sizing becomes an issue because you're like, okay, how much money do we have? What is our burn every month? How many people can we afford? At what skill levels can we afford them? Right now, I don't know how many people are going through recruiting. It's very expensive out there, and you don't want to shortchange people, so you have to be very careful. It's a fine line to walk. If somebody comes along, they have all the skills you need, but then they don't fit your budget. Somebody comes along, fits your budget, but they end up causing more problems than otherwise. So putting that team together is pretty hard, and trying to put them together within your budget is even harder, and then knowing what your budget is another challenge. So that's typically where the publishers come in.
You make it all sound very fun. But leaning into that a little bit, exactly was 3MG's journey through this as well. How and at what point did you decide, okay, I want to be a studio, this is what I want to do, these are the people that I want to work with? How did you find that for yourself?
A lot of accidents. I think most of it is accidental. But that said, you look back and things actually make sense the way they were going along. It went along the natural path. Most of it had to do with personal connections for me. I'd built up a network in the industry over the years. So I happened to meet the right people at the right time who present the right opportunities to us at that time. And then it's just a matter of grabbing the opportunity, like the person that Bala was speaking before. Him and me have had a long working relationship. And when he offered me, like, he knew who I am as a game designer, he knew who I was as a producer. When he offered it, saying that, hey, you want to make games for us? And I said, yeah, of course I want to make games for you guys. And that started it off, right? So it was largely an accident. But of course, it was built over the years. Second thing was about getting the right team together, was it? Lots of mistakes, lots and lots of mistakes. We hired some people in the beginning who it didn't work out with. And it's nobody's fault, really. It's just people not gelling, right? Like the objectives not matching. It's just people don't get along sometimes, and that's okay. But then after that, it was slow, tedious, one by one. Each individual brought stability to the team. And we're still in that process. We're still adding that one by one, right? We're not just growing like mad. We're not running after VC money. We're not running after any of that. That's not our strategy. That's not our style. So yeah, it's just one by one.
And once you were able to actually recognize the right fit, another major challenge is also recognizing the right roles for your team members as well, right?
Yeah.
So at what point, once you had recognized the identity that you were going for, which is to work within the hyper-casual and hybrid casual space, how were you able to allocate the right resources that you required to the team?
Well, with hyper-casual, you start to realize very quickly it's experimental. You're just doing things as fast as you can. So you're just looking for people who can turn around ideas fast, right? So in the morning, everybody's sitting and we talk about a game idea, let's say, or like a designer's come up with a pitch, or somebody's got a concept in hand. How quickly can we see it? How quickly can everybody get their hands on it? So that's usually how we test our candidates as well when we are recruiting. We just give them a test up front and say, okay, you've got so many days. Why don't you take this and just translate this for us? We had to be very sure the people we hire are able to do that, are capable of doing that. And I would still say we're not. But that's like all we're looking for. We're looking for people who can just hit the ground running. They know straight off the bat, like, okay, if an idea is presented, we need to see it as soon as we can. And once we see it, then we start getting iterative. And after that, and then Sunday comes into the picture. You guys test things for us. You give us like the real world data on it. Yeah.
So to continue in that direction, right? Like to what extent and how important is the ideation process for you as a studio? Is it something that has been hands-on for the entire team? Do you have a certain process around it? How do you essentially build ideas that last?
So we're kind of going through multiple versions of it. In some situations, the whole team is pitching in on ideas. In some situations, just I'm coming up with my own. In some situations, in collaboration with you guys at Sunday. In some situations, other designers are doing it. We've just started to scale up. So we've got more designers on the team, and we start coming up with ideas. But the baseline of it is just like, after working with you guys, it's just coming to the understanding. It's finding the player and game fit, right? You're trying to understand the person you're making the game for, and then try to come up with the right idea for them, and then we really don't, it doesn't matter to us where it comes from. It can come from you guys, it can come from me, it can come from my team, it can come from anybody else, it really doesn't matter. But identifying that is like, that's kind of what we've realized is the only thing that makes ideas last. Like with all the tests we've done, by now we know. The more unrelated, like Bala's already touched on this, the more unrelatable our game is, the more useless it is in our tests. We made some games which we thought was wicked cool. Very quickly we were shown like, no, it's not. Yeah, like the farm game, the one he was throwing under the bus, that was one of ours, yeah. Just threw us under the bus quite quickly. But you need to know these things, right? Like we knew what we were doing, we knew we were just learning, we knew we were just screwing around. And that was it. That's one of the good, that's one of the big benefits of finding the right publisher. Like we can screw around literally, and like it's all funded.
And okay, so once you have, obviously there's a creative element to it, right? Yeah. Where you find what fits best for your audience from an engagement standpoint. What is interesting to play? What is fun to play? What extent is also data important to make sure that you're also again repurposing or reusing things that work in ways that are new or more again engaging or interesting for players?
Data is an interesting beast, because what I've learned is that all data is lag data, like you find out post fact, but it's always keeping us on the edge of what has happened so far. Like it kind of contextualizes history, that if we go on to, like, let's say Sensor Tower, or we're looking at data.ai or something like that, and we're just seeing what the metrics in the market are, like which game was doing well, which game has made it into the top 100, which has fallen out of the top 100, and we're trying to reason out why, what. It starts to give you little guardrails to hang on to when you're thinking of your idea, right? And the other thing is it's basically history. It does not predict what's coming up front. But what it does give us is just an understanding, okay, the players have been familiarized with these elements so far, so you can do that with a certain amount of confidence. And if something you've not seen at all, you need to make sure it's nested in something that's already like seen and understood, so your new idea does not go slap them in the face, but instead is a surprise or whatever, right? So data is like a good way where it gets us to that point where history ends, and you kind of have to figure out what comes after that. And then again, data comes into play after that process to confirm whether you made the right call, whether you moved in the right direction, whether your idea was in fact a good idea, whether it was a bad idea. That's another useful thing. It helps us really understand where we stand. Like we are no longer just being savants, like, oh, I know what I'm doing. No, we don't. Like we want to do this, and then data comes and shows us whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing. And because we can't keep our pulse on everybody, we have friends and family who play our games, they're always going to be positive. It's good to get that brutal, again, getting thrown under the bus on the offense. You need that. You really, really need that. And data is what provides that for us.
And to what extent does any kind of technical detail, whether it's the polish, the balancing, the progression, to what extent does that also weigh in your ideation? Is that something that you consider early stage? Is that something that you utilize more once you're in the testing process? Where and how much of technical, let's say, detail do you put into your ideas?
For us, it's as early as possible, simply because I'm an old school game designer. Like, I know how to make games on paper and then produce them. But it's just you can't find success in the market like that. So I have the ability to do it, so for us it comes early. I'm not to say that should be like that for everybody else, it needn't. For someone it might just be, hey, I have this theme idea, let's try it, I just want to reskin this, try it. There may be many other ways to try it. But for us, progression, knowing that the game can last for a long time, knowing that we can ensure that this game is going to stay interesting for a period of time, that we see instantly. Like if I come up with any game idea, we straight away draw up levels. We're trying to see how this game will last over time. Like nothing is in the air. Like if somebody's like, oh, okay, then you start unlocking abilities. I'm okay, what are those abilities? And then we sit down and figure out that entire power fantasy. In some cases, it's a puzzle game. Like, okay, is that a good puzzle game? Make 20 levels, make 80 levels, make level 1, 20, 100. Let's see if this thing works. That's a skill, I think. Like we have it, fortunately. Most people do, and like I think different people have it in different forms. Super important, extremely important. And another headache to worry about is you come up with this idea, it has a technical requirement, can your team execute it? Suddenly you want to make a game about fluid mechanics or like some sort of hardcore physics, or you come up with some idea and you realize nobody's got the chops to do it, it will just go against you, it will just wreck you. Yeah, but it's all important. It comes very early for us.
So I think it's safe to assume that like a studio and the product kind of evolve with each other as well.
Yeah. In fact, each one informs the other, right? Like when we keep failing at some aspect of our game and we realize, okay, this skill we don't have in-house, something's got to change, right? Either you might get a consultant to help in the beginning stage and then hire somebody after, or you might just hire somebody straight off saying like, okay, this gap needs to be filled, else our games are always going to suffer. We have other situations where who we are matters so much that ultimately that bleeds into the product as well. It's a kind of push and pull, these things fight each other, but then they eventually evolve together, like you said. They carry each other forward.
Do you have any examples for everyone here of any specific game that you tried that you think has come as a consequence of this evolution? It taps into the ideation that you mentioned. It taps into understanding, your player behavior, the technical skills, publisher support. Do you have a specific example that you can think of?
We have one, but that's in development. I don't know if I should. You should know. I can't talk about it.
Don't talk about the game, but
yeah, but we did get around to it. Like I think the recent attempts have been getting closer and closer to taking into account all these things. Like that farm game he was talking about. That although that idea came from somewhere, but we took the idea and we're like, okay, let's try it. We took Parking Jam, flipped it up with animals just to see does it work, right? And then we were going to work on gameplay after that, but just to see, it was one of those quick tests. We actually did it quickly, 2 weeks, it was out there, we tested it. And the first test was so bad, like it was just so bad, like it was just brutal. Then soon after that, we redid the creatives to like punctuate some new things, just to see, like, okay, we just want to see if the theme is working. It didn't work at all. But then now we have new games that are currently in development that follow all these rules. Like we're making like a power fantasy game where things are, like we've got our abilities mapped out. We know for the next year we can keep the game alive if it clears the gates. We do have another game that's in testing, which again, I don't know if I can talk about that. But yeah, I don't know, you put me in the spot here. Sorry.
As a studio, again, of course, you also, while you're testing, you learn a lot, right? Like the farm game.
We keep coming back to that. Can we stop?
We always come back to that.
Right.
You learn how not to reskin a game, for instance.
Yeah. Never do that. Yeah.
How important is failing as a studio? And what is the right mindset to approach that?
Well, just don't see it as failing. It's just like, okay, you tried something, it didn't work out. All right, big deal. The less you're afraid of failing, I mean, the more you're going to experiment. It just puts some more, I don't know, just frees you mentally to like, it's okay, right? And it's important you have a partner that agrees that it's okay. Because if we're like, oh, you need to succeed by next week, everyone's going to fail. Hands down, no one's going to succeed. But if you're like, okay, just keep screwing around till you find something that works, there's a chance most people will figure something out. I mean, that's the hope the whole studio is running on. Let's hope that actually is true. Don't take my word for it. I'll find out. I'll come back in a year or so. Maybe we'll have a game. But yeah, most importantly, we check our impulses. We correct our assumptions. We know where we're just flat out wrong. And sometimes we just know the game. This is not the time for the game. This is not the market for the game. Sometimes this is not the publisher for the game. Sometimes it's just not the platform for the game. Maybe that's supposed to exist as a much larger experimental game on the PC space. Maybe it should be like a full-scale development on like a console or something. You can't afford to do these things, but some of your ideas you must just realize they belong in different spheres. And failing shows us that very clearly. Like there was a game we made, right? Like there was a dogfighter game with a plane flying around shooting things. Wicked game. Like I loved it. Anybody who touched it loved it, right? It was a lot of fun to play. Very sticky mechanic, but it just didn't pan out. The tests just kept coming back. No. So then you have to stop and wonder, like, is that a bad game? Because whoever touches it seems to enjoy playing it. But then you just realize, okay, it's just not fitting the market. It's just not for these people. It's all right. Just put it in your back burner. We'll come back to that later, under some other context, in some other pretext. It will find its way back. It'll be a necro game. It'll come back alive. So that's a good example, actually, Dogfighter.
And how do you as a studio then like give advice to other studios out there or developers out there? How do you read a market? And at what point do you realize that it's evolving as well?
Honestly, I've given up trying to read the market. That's what's happened. But that said, you have to watch for the evolution, right? Don't get hung up. For a while, your ideas sound like it's on the right time, but sometimes it's not. I'm constantly looking at the new games that are making their way to the top. I kind of rely a little bit on Sunday, who provide us like data. They give us benchmarking stuff, like, okay, these are the kind of games that I've released over the years. This is how they've evolved over time. The generations of hyper-casual games like you showed us. You kind of had to track history a little bit. And then you start to understand where things are in the today. Then after that, just looking at the market is plenty, because then some new games coming up, Sensor Tower shows you something, or Data.ai showing you something. Somebody will show you something like, hey, this new game came out, this one's charting, this one's made it into the top 100, and then from top 100 to top 50 to top 30. You got to stop and go, something's going on with that game, right? And then you just try and fish out what you think it is, and then you run your experiments, and then hopefully something works itself out. But broadly reading the market, I don't do. I can't. It's like reading the stock market at this point. It's horrible. But you just keep an eye on it. It informs you as well as it needs to.
It's interesting you talk about, the evolution of hyper-casual into hybrid casual, and that's something, again, Bala also touched upon. Because when you look at this first generation of games, they're very mechanic first, right? You're looking at a helix jump, or you're looking at a Flappy Bird, which is really focused on just continuing an action. And then you develop that into something a lot heavier now, which is relying not just on an action, but also a meta layer or a secondary gameplay. What vision do you have for yourself, again, around ideation within this market for building those kinds of games, and what kind of resources, again, do you require?
See, these hybrid games are a different beast. Like Bala had pointed out, this is really cool. If any of you game designers, you need to figure this out, that the live ops and scaling are kind of connected. So you have to know where the game is going a little bit in advance, because you want to kind of respond to the player as well. We haven't yet got to the point where we are testing a game at that scale, right? We're working on something. We haven't yet gotten to that point. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. Yeah.
All right. I think that was my last question.
What was the question again?
It was about how you see the ideas.
Right, yeah, okay. So, the thing we were talking about, ideation, progression needs to be worked on in advance. Now that's just like an ingrained thing now. Like if you come up with an idea, we're thinking about monetization strategies. I mean, we're just ideas, right? We're just trying to keep something to hang on to, that when the time comes, we're not zero ideas. We have some idea, right? We're like, okay, you've come up with this idea. How is it going to monetize like this? How is it going to stay engaging like this? Who's your audience? These people. And all these things kind of click into place when you have an idea, right? And it's really crucial. Like now it's become, if you were doing those Gen 1 games, like the ones you're talking about, like Stack or something like that you just need a mechanic idea and you're good to go, right? Like what's just any idea, anything will just fly. And like the Dogfighter game should have worked. But now with hybrid casual, you have to like proper game design is taking place now. You have to think about it in layers, but you have to stay in that hyper casual framework. Short play sessions, bite-sized games, easy to understand, easy to pick up, easy to drop. So all those things stay in place. It's a fascinating place we are in right now.
So a combination of easy to pick up, easy to play, plus something a lot deeper that keeps you engaged, and a meta layer that helps you monetize.
Yeah.
Okay.
Meta layers, progression, dynamics, systems, all these things just fit into it on top of each other. How many of you game designers here? Okay, there's a few. You know what I'm talking about. Like that game design part. Oh, wait till you get there. All right.
I think that's it then.
That was it. Okay.
Yeah. Do we have any questions?
Oh, also, wait, before we go into that, there's one thing I want like about finding publishers, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I cannot overstate how helpful Sunday is being for us, right? Like it's just turns out it's the right fit for whatever reason, right? We test our ideas fast. We're constantly fed data. We constantly know where we're screwing up, and we constantly have some direction to work on. Feeling lost is a fairly rare occurrence, but failing is a common occurrence. So that's just about it. That's just about it. So if you're like a new studio trying to set up, or like if you're a studio trying to like pivot into something, just get your partners right. Like for us, it worked out with Sunday. It's not going to work out for everybody, right? But then there's other publishers out there. Find somebody good.
All right. Any questions?
Sorry? I'm sorry, I just brought you the mic.
Hello.
Yeah.
Yeah, hi. So I wanted to ask that how do you find the right people without exhausting your war chest, like money-wise?
Just try and make more money, I guess. No, wait, I'll answer that seriously. You try to do the cheap ways first, right? With some luck, you'll find one person, right? And when you find that one or two people, then you have some stability in your cash flow because you're able to produce something. You're able to then create some revenue, however small. Then from that, you should be able to engage a recruiter with some kind of payment terms that you agree on in advance. We had a recruitment partner who came in a lot later. In the beginning, it was just me and like whoever else was there sitting on LinkedIn trying to find people. That also gave us very bad people. Or let's not say bad people, that's not the case, bad fits, right? But then a recruiter came along and made our life a lot easier. And those recruiters, sometimes the right recruiter will offer you good payment terms. That okay, you hire this guy, right? But then after that, you can pay back in 2 months or 3 months. You can work out payment systems, right? You negotiate a good deal with them, and how you pay it out over time. That makes a big difference, right? But then you have to be sure that when you hire this person, you immediately can get something done, that you can create revenue, and then you need to stop thinking in terms of war chest, right? War chest will run out. It's going to run out. Cash flow doesn't. Think in terms of cash flow. Like, are you creating enough cash flow, right? How are you creating that cash flow? In whatever fashion, right? It might be your own games generating revenue, might be a publishing partner giving for something. Maybe you've created a prototype and got paid for it. Maybe you've done a service project. That's like your real war chest, right? So if whoever can fit into that, that's good. So in the beginning, I did the LinkedIn thing, marginal success, almost no success. Advertising on LinkedIn works. Recruiters got us the best results. And referral still is our best way to hire somebody. When one individual in your company says, this guy will be a perfect fit for this place, that's usually the best kind of people we've got. Right? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Abhiram. Hi, Vandana. Thanks for today. Thank you for your time. My question to you, Abhiram, is that do you ever come across in a situation where you feel that your game is going monotonous and your players are losing interest? How do you battle with that?
I've never reached that point with our studio yet. We're still young. We've not got a game to that stage, so I don't know if I'm the right person to answer that question. But in the past, I've had that experience. Like when we were making casual games, I've had that experience. But that's just good game design solves that issue. If you know in advance, like when you're making your game, like I said, just plan just do level 1, level 50, level 100, level 200, just to see how your game evolves over time. That's the problem in game design, solvable, right? A good game designer should get that out of the way for you.
Can I add another question?
Yeah.
When you said that you come across a scenario where you have gotten a certain number of people and they are not necessarily the right fit,
Yeah.
how do you battle with that?
Well, you just got to let them go. Or if you don't, they're going to leave very acrimoniously. One of the two is going to happen. Look, most problems resolve themselves, right? You just need to stay on the track. You know where you're going. Just keep going. these things just come and go. Like probably, it's, you know how it is. It's always going to be a pain, and either eventually you'll give up and say, okay, this is not working out, please leave, or they themselves will leave. We've had both situations happen. There were people we fired in 2 weeks of hiring, and I don't mean to do that. I hate to waste their time like this, but got hired under false pretenses. What can I do? So basically, our testing got more strict. Okay. Like now we have like a pretty hefty test that anybody needs to complete. Multiple people have dropped out saying, "Oh, that's too big a test for hiring." I'm like, fine, that's okay. Don't do it if you don't want to. But that ultimately is your day job here. If you can't do it there, you're not going to enjoy your job here. It should be like I really enjoy my work. I find it really bizarre people can't work. So a big test like that is how I solve the problem.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense actually.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
All right.
I was going to ask you, how do you find good teammates and a good fit for the team, but you answered it somehow like rigorous testing. So can you just go into what is that entail, like the testing and all?
For employees?
Yeah, for employees or teammates.
Teammates, yeah. We produced a game some time ago, I think it was almost a year or something ago, for Sunday only. We have the game's APK, so I just send that over to them and say, just rebuild it as soon as you can. And then they send back builds, and what wildly different results. It's such a charm to watch it, right? Just take one game you've made, just give it to somebody and say, okay, as short as possible, we're not going to give you any art, we're not going to give you any assets, just show us the same game backward, right? Just give it back to us. And that one I very specifically, that was like a pretty big game. It was not like a hyper casual game in that traditional sense. It had a lot of progression built in. So I said, ignore the progression, all the core mechanics. Some customers are walking in, they have requests, you go pick up something, come drop it. I know the exact number of features in there because we built it, right? So when it comes back, you should see how people choose different features to develop because they think that's important, right? And every once in a while, you'll find one person who thinks just like you. They'll pick just the right stuff. Like they know what makes the heart of the game tick. And they'll work only on that. They'll ignore everything else. So for me, that's a sign of a good fit for me is that. For somebody else might be like, okay, they might focus on VFX, or somebody might try to find the right art or something like that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. This is particularly for programmers, right? With designers, I send out concept tests and design tests and things like that.
Hi. We sometimes think that some games ideas are foolproof and they are definitely going to work, and you have experienced that.
Yeah,
so why do you think that happens? What are the reasons for that? Like some ideas which we really think will definitely work, why don't they work in the current market?
You're thinking about yourself and not the market. That's all. That's the simple answer. You're thinking about yourself. You enjoy it. You love it. So it's like, wow, this is the best thing ever. But you're not thinking about the market. The market's not you. And in the market, which segment? They are not us. Like I struggle with this a lot. It's not unique. Brinda knows she has to kill all my ideas. I really struggle with this because you're making it for like, let's say, a Western audience, sometimes a women audience, sometimes a male audience. You never know who you're making it for. But you need to step outside yourself. Simple way to do it is just walk around giving it to random people and see how they play. You can do it internally, do it in your families, friends, people who are not gamers. I give it to my wife, complete that. You'd see the games I love, she hates. The games I hate, she loves. That told me everything I needed to find out, right? And like you'll find that too. Just make sure that you get it out of your system as soon as you can. One practice I use as a designer is I do concept documents, very rich concept documents. I don't hesitate to spend time on it. And I can just hand it around and people read it and they get excited or not excited. Right? Sometimes I'll just mock up levels and I'll hand it around. Right? Anything to just get it out of your system. Don't be your own judge. It becomes harder, that's all. But if there's a game you love, don't give up, make it. But remember, it's not for, you find your market. Right? That's it. If you're a hardcore gamer and you're making for the hyper casual audience, good luck, man. No one's going to play your game. That's it.
Just to add to that, actually, from a publisher's perspective, what you can do is what we call the grandma test. You give your game to someone who has no idea how to play it, and you respond to their feedback. So if they're struggling with onboarding, that's the part that you need to fix. Or if the progression is boring, if the art style is the issue, that's the right way to do it. You take someone, because that's how this entire segment was born, right? We weren't in hyper casual targeting players. We were targeting viewers and converting them into players. And that's what you want to go for, because that still remains the core of hybrid casual. The acquisition element is still hyper casual in that sense. So you look for people, you convert them into players, and then you keep them playing. I think that's a good way to look at it as well.
You know, just to add some gravitas to that, Miyamoto did a talk in GDC, Shigeru Miyamoto, some years ago. He says a game must be fun to watch as it is to play, right? Like Mario guy, I mean, of course, everybody knows. He can think that, I think you need to too. Yeah, right? Oh, somebody back there.
Hi. I'm just asking question from an end user point of view, nothing to do with any development or anything. I play most of hyper casual games, even my kids also. But the thing is, right, when we look into the hyper casual games, the only thing what comes into my mind is ads.
Ads.
Too many ads.
Yeah.
And the duration which we spend to watch an ad is not enough even to finish a level also. So by the time I spend a little amount of time to finish, but the ad time is going to take more time. So what are you thinking in the kind of end users where, for example, I'm an end user where I try to play hyper casual, but because of these ads, like I try to stop playing hyper casual games at all completely. So from a company point of view, I know like monetization is the one that would help you. Ads are the one that gonna give you some revenue kind of thing. But from an end user point of view, how you are going to satisfy just decreasing the ads, or maybe it could be level specific, or it could be at some point, but how we are trying to ensure about these kind of ads that are really ruining hyper casual games, in my opinion, actually.
Yeah. I'll answer. I can give my perspective on it. I get what you're saying, because even I hate it. But that said, I did bring this up once with the publishing head, and he had shown me a game where they turned off the ads and it started doing worse. I can't really say what's going on with it. It seems like a market thing. Like, if you think about it, it should not have grown so big if it was such a blocker. You understand what I mean? It should never have gotten big, but it did. I think everyone's just happy playing it for free, I guess. Like, everyone just understands what it is. I don't know. Personally, I hate it, but the business case there, I can't make sense of it. It's here for now. I know that platforms are trying to shut it down, or at least make it manageable. I know that the publishers and game developers are also trying to get into that rewarded ads thing. Like, okay, maybe just don't throw ads, but here's a way to do it. They integrate it into the game. Like, you know, Dreamdale is a good example. They do a lot of RVs. So the Crossy Roads, of course, started it off. People are thinking in every angle, but as long as it works, they're going to keep doing it. Like, why would you walk away from free money? I don't know.
I think, yeah, just to add to that, you also have to look at the actual business model of the game itself as well, right? These classic hyper-casual games that you were playing, they were looking, again, at people who wanted to binge play. They weren't looking for something to come back to maybe after D7, right? If you had a 5% D7, you were killing it. It was great. You were doing super well. And that's obviously in combination with the CPIs that we were looking at the time as well, which were well below 20 on a good game, well below 40 on an average game. You don't see those metrics anymore, right? And that's why IS is a lot more invasive now compared to previously, where players were happy because they went through 5 days of IS. Sure, it was annoying. Yes, you went on our airplane mode, and then publishers started to add features where you had to go back online. And then they were like, well, this is not working for us. And now that's why you see the shift towards RVs and IPs as much as you do. One, because CPIs are rising, so you need to compensate for the LTV. And the best way to do that is to make your player think it's their idea, that they are choosing to watch the ad that they're watching. Hence the RVs, right? And that's what all the great games that you see now in hybrid casual / evolved hyper casual, whatever you want to call it, that's what they do well, whether it's Dreamdale, whether it's My Perfect Hotel. If you look at the balancing of how ads show up on My Perfect Hotel, it's brilliant. They do it by distributing how and when your RVs pop up. So if you're low on cash, if you're close to an upgrade, you suddenly see one emerge. It sticks around for a certain amount of seconds. If you trigger it, great. If you don't trigger it, it disappears, and then it reappears right when you need it. So that's where the balancing has started becoming a lot deeper with the monetization strategy compared to earlier. And of course, you still have like older games like a Flappy Bird, for instance, or a Flappy Dunk, sorry. Flappy Dunk had, I think, 2 or 3 years ago, Flappy Dunk still had a D7 after all those years. It's been scaled, it's doing well. It still had, I think, a D7 of approximately 12%, which is extremely high for a hyper casual game. And that's where they continued to use the IS because they could. They could afford that because CPIs were stable. 3 years into a game, your CPIs are stable, you know what kind of LTVs you're looking at, and therefore you only introduce RVs and IPs if you need it. Then you look at something like a Castle Raid or a My Perfect Hotel or these more like power progression heavy, mob control, collect 'em all. The engagements that you're looking at on those kind of games is completely different. So you adapt your monetization strategy to that as well. So there's also that element to it.
It's now becoming more a problem in design, isn't it? Just figuring out how best to show it to the people. Like there's a game called Eat Venture. I don't remember watching ads. I know I've seen ads, but the game was good. It was lovely. Everything just fed into each other. That I don't remember it.
Yeah, a good rule of thumb is basically make the player think it's their idea to watch it. Whether it's unlocking a specific power or the illusion of a power, a momentary fever mode, some kind of reward system, some kind of collectible, some kind of really special thing. Make every single RV feel like an Easter egg, essentially. That's the best way to do it.
But then just so long as they don't go in the opposite direction where they jack the game against you and then throw the RV. No, there's a nice way to do it, and games do it. Not everyone does it. The market's rewarding people who don't do it yet. That has to change. The market has to change.
Nowadays, video ads are also have become smart, where end user has to identify where is the cross button or when it is going to come.
Yeah, and not just that, man. Like until the market rewards it, they're not going to stop, right? What are you going to do, right?
Hyper casual was born by people who couldn't find pink. So I think finding a no thanks or a cross is already a challenge. So.
Anyway. Somebody back there.
Hi. Earlier in the session, you said you have to monitor your rate of progression and you have to adapt your rate of progression throughout the marketing of the game. But then, how do you figure out how much progression is enough? Like, if you made 50 levels, how do you know not to make 75 more or 100 more or how many more?
Well, number of levels is hardly progression in my opinion.
I think I misphrased my question. How do you know how much progression to add once you've created the game?
See, early on you're just doing that to see whether the game is capable of expanding, right? Then you kind of go with the flow of development and live ops once it gets to that stage, right? We've just got, I think just one game has gotten to that point where some features have started to get added. They were all known well in advance, right? It's just confirming that your idea makes sense. Like if you take Flappy Bird and I say make 300 levels, like do you have material there? Like can you, right? You have to ask that question, right? Then at the same time, if we throw another kind of game mechanic at you, maybe it can expand, right? It's only to confirm that you're able to expand the game. Otherwise, that's a bad idea, right? Like I mean, it's a small idea. Then you just make it. All right, this is it. Couple of levels, chuck it away, and walk off. But if you want to invest time in it and make it one of those, like they were talking about LTVs and all that, if you want to make it one of those long games that have like retention over long periods of time, it just needs to last that long. Think about, I mean, if you play hardcore games, think about it if you just did the same thing again and again and again and again. It get frustrating, right? And you just confirm it in advance. I think that was the point I was getting at.
And I think that also ties in with the genre that you pick, right? I see Madhu in the crowd. He's the guy behind Collect 'em All for all of those who don't know him already. He managed to get 43D1 with one level. So I think he was already set, you know. In that sense, you don't need too much progression in a game like that because it's ASMR heavy, it's 2 dots inspired, it has a core that works. But then if you're looking at a runner or if you're looking at something which is a content heavy puzzle or a U-boat, you might need a lot more levels. So it's also recognizing what is the strength of your game and kind of expanding on that. So progression could look like different things. It could look like features, it could look like content, it could look like even different kinds of gameplays that come in.
Hey Vrinda, hey Abhiram, nice session. I have a question. How does your timeline looks like for a typical prototype? between ideation and looks like you're going to write a design document as well, and then actual prototyping and development?
3 weeks is what, currently that's our rate. We need to be faster. We're kind of rethinking how we go about it because we want to test more. So we're kind of adjusting in that direction. 3 weeks roundabouts is kind of where we are at now. The games are not, like if I was making a full-fledged game, like those old casual games, or like where it's content heavy, then it might take a week or two to do the GDD. But in these cases, the GDD is done in a day. We fully understand what the game is very quickly. At concept, you need to understand the game. Then the GDD is just the technical breakdown of it for the team to take off. So yeah, 3 weeks is what we are at right now, give or take. We're working towards bringing it to like 1.5 weeks. That's our best case.
Okay. I mean, how do you segment, like ideation, is it like 1 week or?
Ideation's ongoing. We're not waiting for one idea, like what idea do we have? As soon as an idea is either greenlit or we get excited about it, want to do something about it, I don't spend more than a few hours with the design team just working out what this game is, right? Because like I said, the concept usually does all the work for us, right? So then from there to jumping into production, it's a rapid. The tricky part is getting art in line, right? Like the artists just need to click into what the game is and understand it. That's the hard part. Our art comes in very late, right? But 3 weeks we look at, let's say 2 days of just understanding the game and getting ready for production, and we ideally see the core loop in like a week's time, like the full core loop. We try to see it in a week's time, sometimes not. Then we start building out any progression ideas that we had, some extra features here and there for the remainder of the time, and then the art kicks in the last week. That's typically how it's done.
Thanks.
Yeah, but a first playable we try to get in a week. Sorry?
Hi. Oh, yeah.
Hello. Hey.
Yeah. Where do you see the hyper-casual genre going forward in like 5-10 years in future? Do you think there will be still popular genre to play or create games for?
That's for you to answer, I think.
We don't know where it's going next month, so 5 years is far. I think that's a very interesting question. I mean, here's the thing. When you look at games 5 years back and you compare them to now, you see that they are deeper, right? So I would assume that it would go in a similar direction where you find some kind of sweet spot of a mobile experience or something extremely heavy or deep. But that being said, you never know how the market evolves, so it's kind of hard to say specifically that is where it's going. But that is definitely the hunch, looking at data, looking at games that are performing, because it's no longer about what climbs up and down the charts really quickly. It's about what stays, what sticks. So the longevity element of it is dependent on engagement. It is dependent on longer-term gameplay. So definitely in that direction.
There is a historical perspective I can give you. Think about the origin of video games. The growth of the technology happened along with the growth of the player, right? Like we were never, like the early players, let's say the guys playing games in the 80s, were never exposed to complex games because the technology couldn't provide it, right? So what would happen is you're playing the Pongs, you're playing Galaga, you're playing Space Invaders, or you're playing Joust, and we were playing those kind of games growing up, right? Because the tech couldn't go faster, and then we started to get faster than the tech, and then the tech is getting ahead, and we're getting ahead. So we had this nice game going on with tech, and that's what the hardcore games industry is, right? People who've played their entire life, who understand the control. There's 16 buttons on the 22, if I'm right, on the Xbox, right? Think about it. If I give it to a complete random person, 22 buttons, they're not going to play anything, right? So in that sense, when the mobile came around, the feature phone games, which is where India's game industry started with the feature phone, right? Again, limited tech, so limited game, so anybody played it. And then iPhones come along. Every time a new paradigm was created, new users were added, right? People who cannot engage with those multiple buttons are now just playing these throwaway games. Social games came along, the Facebook games, it brought in a completely different audience. Hyper-casual that way has brought in a completely different audience, right? Hyper-casual has existed in the past. We just didn't think of them as hyper casual, right? Like all the old card games, like Free Cell, and they all essentially are the same bucket. We just haven't categorized them as such, right? This audience is growing, just like every other game's audience has grown over the years. I don't know whether they're going to make it to hardcore. Like one day they'll be sitting and playing like a Diablo or something. I can't imagine that, but they will be playing very rich experiences a bunch of years from now. That much I can see. Does that make sense?
And I think we have maybe one last question. All right.
Hello guys, what kind of subgenre Sunday is working on? Do you think runners are doing well? As I see some of runners like Weapon Craft Run is doing well. What do you think about runners particularly?
So Sunday itself is not focused so much on runners. We're definitely leaning, as Bala showed in his previous presentation, we're leaning towards puzzles at the moment. The rationale for it is that we're looking at heavy engagement, heavy gameplay. Personally, I worked on runners in the past at my time at Voodoo. I think that the challenge with runners is again longevity, which is why you see them dropping off. That being said, it's not impossible to build a good runner. I think that High Heels is a really good example of something that managed to scale on its own. But what was working for that game, working in the favor of that game, was definitely the community that it tapped into, right? It was this very TikTok-friendly game that they built out. Again, a game like a Slice It All did the same thing, wherein it tapped into an LGBTQ community on TikTok. So I do think runners can work. It's about finding people who are excited or enthusiastic enough about what they see to play it, because otherwise engagement becomes your challenge on those kinds of games. So.
And my time with Sunday, I've never worked on a runner game. So. That's it.
I think that's a wrap. Thank
you
you so
guys.
much, everyone.
Thank you for listening to us.